Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a very special NINJAGOcast. We are today interviewing two wonderful people from the LEGO group, but first let me introduce ourselves. I'm Sensei Wolf.
I'm Eljay, down here in the corner.
I'm Meso, over here.
I'm Sokoda.
And today we're going to be interviewing Tommy Andreasen and Michael Knap from the Ninjago team. A huge thanks for the LEGO Ambassador Network for setting this up for us. But we're going to jump right into questions for you two. So I guess first question is, what is your current role in the LEGO group and also your current role in for Ninjago?
Michael?
Yep. Yeah, I can start. So right now I've been with Ninjago for the past 7.5 years, going through the roles of responsibilities all the way from like junior designer. I'm now sitting as a design manager in Ninjago and driving a lot of the development we're doing with the sets, but also in sitting and working together a lot with Tommy on that kind of like cross between product and TV show as well.
Yes, and hi, I'm Tommy. Over my 19 years at LEGO, I have kind of stumbled my way to a role of producer for LEGO now, which means that I produce the TV show. I am responsible for the story creation process on several shows. And I also talk to people like Michael to make sure that we get a great synergy between the product development and the stories that we create for the networks and online.
Okay. All right. So it's your fault we're here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate both of you and everybody on the team.
All right.
Yeah. We're not solely responsible for this. There's
no.
people that you don't get to see.
Evidently.
If there wasn't a building instruction, like, oh, we wouldn't have a job. Good point. It's super codependent. Put it like that.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump into some questions, or not structural ones. Hayley, what's our first one?
So first one is we really want to focus a little bit on the set development for Ninjago, because it's really fascinating that Ninjago is a story theme that is also, as a LEGO theme, it sells sets. So discuss the process of creating a new set wave from the start. So like, how do you develop unique concepts, and where does the story come in once you develop like a unique set theme?
Yeah, so the way we do it in Ninjago is probably a little bit different from other themes within LEGO. We actually have, like, even before starting building out the products, we really early start thinking about what is the story we want to tell and what are the ingredients that goes into it. And that in that matter as well, we have people like Tommy coming in quite early in the process and giving input of what is a good story to tell and how can we kind of drive that. So that is some of the first steps we take, and then from that we kind of start really broad with it and figuring out, okay, so what are the individual ingredients that make sense, and then slowly developing it to kind of funnel it into something that is like more concrete. And at that point in time, when we know exactly what is the assortment going to be to some extent without having really developed the product yet, that's where often it's handed over to Tommy and that side of the producers and writers as well to kind of like develop the story. And then those two processes are kind of like running at the same time, inspiring each other as well. But I would say like all the way from the start, story is a massive key in our production of the products and a really keystone of what Ninjago is, in my opinion.
And even before that, there's like a bunch of different concepts being developed by the Ninjago team. So what you might see on screen in 2022 was first developed like 3 years or 4 years ago as, oh, here's a half-baked idea that we'll test out alongside these other ones. Oh, this is the one that is most mature and great now. But then the other ideas will keep being developed while sets and other stories are being brought out, and then eventually we will get to an idea that is maybe four years old and wasn't the best at the time, but now it's been matured, and now it's just like, yes, that's what we need.
Yeah, and maybe there's like key components from each idea that is kind of incorporated into it to really strengthen them. And I think also throughout the process, we have a lot of kids tests that is coming in, right? And getting kids' reaction to what is it the stories they are picking up on. So often we show them one picture, right, with everything in it, from bad guys, good guys, vehicles, they're like, and see just what stories do they tell, what is it that they're actually picking up on. And that is then the things that's like, oh, they really like this little spider in the corner, and they made up a ton of story of this. Okay, maybe we should kind of build on this into something more, right? And so you never, of course, we have a really good idea of what is working, but often that is also like some of the really inspiring moments is like when kids is really like making their own stuff, and that is something that is then built on further on in the process as well.
Yeah, that's also why it's important that everyone is there for that, because everyone can pick up little pieces, and then the writer knows about that thing, and that's working in the back of his mind for 6 months, and then it grows into something great that may then be applied to the actual toy line. So it's a fluid process back and forth between development of toy and development of story.
Yeah, and you can say like when we move into that into the toy development and those two processes of the story writers flushing out the story at the same time, we have a really good idea of what is the product we want to do at that point in time, right? But that doesn't mean that the writers cannot come up with ideas or characters that we haven't thought out as a part of the assortment. And there is more than one instance where we have kind of, where the writers, whether that being Hegeman or Breggy or whatever, right, they like coming up with some really, really cool characters that we like just have to put in, and further down the line playing a massive role in what Ninjago is today, right? So that's why like the story really inspires us as set designers, but we also really inspire the story of what it actually is, right? So it's a good synergy as I see it.
And it's a great conflict-filled tug of war, because obviously they want to come up with like blue sky stuff. So you get characters like Fugitive and the Lowly, and then it's like, oh, can these be worked into sets? And maybe if they can't, can they later? But you know, it's the content is also a great testing ground for ideas, really.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that's the case, right? So when they come up with a character that is like, okay, we maybe not planned this in, but there is a really good opportunity to do it, we also go in and really supervise it and make sure that, okay, let's make sure that this design that you can either put it together yourself from other designs around in the Lego portfolio, so it's realistic in that matter, or we plan it out so it's like, hey, maybe there is an opportunity to put this in like in a small LEL set that is like extended licensing that we're doing through magazines and stuff like that, where there is this opportunity that is a bit more obscure, that doesn't really fit into the main line as it is, right? So we always conscious about that as I see it.
Yeah, no, that's why you guys are always crying out for those minifigures.
Yeah.
I mean, we love the side characters, but I guess we love developing them more than we love reusing.
That makes sense. You know,
That is the
development
Ninjago.
pipeline goes.
That is how Ninjago goes.
Keep it up. Keep on making more of those. We need some more stuff to complain about. It's how we get views. Thank you.
And you know, it's like that's also part of why in the development of when we came up with the legacy line was that it's like we have so many characters that have a potential to be fitting in it, because when we're developing it, we never know if one character necessarily is going to blow up. We have a good idea if a side character is playing a bigger role, but sometimes we don't really have the room for it in the assortment, right? And with the legacy, at least in some cases, we have had the opportunity to then fit it into that line and give it to the fans. So the kids that don't necessarily have a relationship to it, it's still a cool character, but for the real fans, they get the opportunity to get this character, get this set, right? So I think that's a little baby of mine, at least, to try and make this fit into it. So
Absolutely.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Just thank you for making sure that Dareth got one. That's
And thank you for releasing the Overlord Dragon.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was I was pushing that on Michael for years, and I think he knew that it would happen, but he just wouldn't tell me.
It's one of those things that is I've had like very few set ideas that I'm really like trying to fit in and finding the right spot for it in our portfolio, and it's the Overlord Dragon is definitely one that is like, yeah, wouldn't it have been nice if it was like $100 dragon that was like massive? But then it's like, okay, we have this spot where we can do it here, so let's do it and make sure that we actually have the opportunity to put it out, because it's if the question is, would it be like this $30 set that we came out and trying to execute it there or nothing, then I would rather shoot it out and actually give it the opportunity to have a life.
100%. Yeah.
So.
But I love the concept of that, because that opens up the whole idea of legacy or classic Ninjago, like stuff that was in the show but you never got as a toy. Now, that's where they broke new ground, because before it was recreations of previously seen stuff.
Yeah, and I think some of the sets as well is also it's something that fits under. It might have been a set we did before, right? So for instance, the monastery, but we have never really done it so it actually looked like it did in the TV show, right?
Yeah,
the same with
like a portion of the monastery.
Exactly, and it's like, so when I was like writing out the brief for it, it was like it was so important that we had to stay really close to how it actually looks in the TV show. So we got as much of a representation, and I think the same goes for the Tournament of Elements sets now that we have out. Like the old one didn't really have a resemblance of what that was besides of the characters, right? So that's what the Legacy line have opportunities, at least to be more show accurate, just be cooler, as I see it, like build something that looks more awesome than the previous.
I guess this is a good segue to discuss a bit about Ninjago City Gardens as a, direct-to-consumer set that has the scale of a Ninjago movie, but is for the series. Tyler is already building it now.
Almost done.
Almost done. I got this.
Only five more hours to go.
Maybe. Ooh, that's generous. But talk a bit about the development for that massive, wonderful piece of artwork with all the Ninjago series, references and locations and minifigures.
So the way we approach it is that we started up something with Ninjago City, right, and followed along with the docs as well, and I think it's been something we've been discussing in the design team for many years, that we really want to build on this, because there's so many opportunities to do something that looks completely different from any other things you find in the Lego portfolio, right? I think the strength as well is that even though that it's Ninjago, whether that's movie or legacy, it speaks to a lot of other people that normally wouldn't buy Ninjago, right? It's just this crazy world. So I think that is the main achievement that these kind of sets for as a product needs to achieve from my perspective. And so that was something we had in there. It's like, even though that is an Ninjago set, it just needs to be as impressive for others as well, right? When me and Marcus were sitting down and kind of like starting up the initial talks to this, we really dig deep into a lot of these concept art that me and Tommy have been sitting with, right, with Wilfilm and with Wildbrain as well, that is developed for the TV show, because there is so much really good detail and a lot of really strong concepts in everything that comes out from the TV show. So we try to kind of pinpoint some of the things that was important and we wanted to have in there, and then just trying to incorporate as much as we could as possible. And then together with that, it was kind of an open brief from the beginning to Marcus, what he was sitting with, because my belief is also that a set like this is better if there is some sort of like freehand opportunity for him to just go crazy with it. That was what Nico, the designer of the first set, did as well. It's like, hey, like go crazy, do whatever you like. That fits really well with what this kind of set is, right? It's like it needs to be as crazy and wild as possible, and then let's see where that takes us, and then we can always like pull it back. But in best case, let's go more crazy with it, basically.
Best case, you don't need to pull it back.
Did Nick ever, or sorry, Nick, Did Nick ever work on it on Gardens?
So did he tell you that he worked on it?
No. I haven't asked him.
Oh, right.
I haven't had a chance.
No, I think the thing about these kind of sets that is like the $300 range that these ones is, right? It's of course it's one designer sitting mainly with kind of driving the whole set and driving where it needs to be, but there is a lot of people's input going into these, right? So Marcus that have been sitting in the project building on it, when you go by, whether that's Nick or me or whoever is in the team, right? Like you cannot help yourself to not give an input. So there is a lot of smaller details that is kind of like, hey, for instance, we have Demetrius that is sitting in the team, right? He loves building dragons like I do. So it's like coming with like the small bone dragon in the as well as like trying to push that on Marcus for a lot of times. It's like, hey, couldn't it be cool to put this in, right? So there's a lot of details that is like built by different people or taking input of kind of like to the end result. And as Tommy said, it's like it's a collaborative kind of work that comes into it in the end, right?
It's actually the same with the story development, where I've kind of been pushed in front. Oh, now I'm the guy apparently, but there's so many people developing this.
Exactly.
So it is like, yeah, it's totally unfair that some people are just like, oh, there's the face. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Was there anything that for you, Tommy, that you were like, you have to put this in Gardens, like this location or this minigure or this anything?
I hardly knew it happened. I was just like a pleasant surprise. And like, oh, by the way, we're doing this thing with this guy called Joshua Deck, and if we also need some music, and it's like, then I waddle down to the Ninjago area and get a presentation of it, and I'm just like.
Tommy, don't lie. I know you really pushed for Sensei Wu's dog. I know that was your favorite minifigure.
Actually, that one came from Sven, that is a creative lead right now in Ninjago. He's the one pushed for Sensei Wu's dog to get in there. So. But yeah, it's always a kind of a decision of like.
Can I just say how horrified I was also in season 5 Possession when I figured out that there was a dog in that set. Like what?
What happened? It was true.
There's a dog.
Because like there's this very, very big collaboration in the beginning, and then when it gets down to finishing off the details on the product, I'm totally now just doing story, so I might miss out on stuff like that. And they're just improving the product, and it is obviously a better product if there's a dog in it. But it's like, okay, the synergy is a little mismatched, but you get a better building and play experience, so I guess it's fine.
Who don't like a husky with a crossbow, right?
But what are you talking about? Okay, this is a major retcon. You don't remember Sensei Wu's dog from the show? He did bark jitsu.
But I think actually for a long time it was not a husky. It was Nico, the designer that did it. I think actually it was a goat at some point as well that he had in there. He just wanted to like really like throw in an animal because he could, basically. So I think that's why.
And now we have a chicken.
It would have been falling.
I feel like Nick does that for all sorts of things. He just throws animals in, like the bonsai tree that recently came out. 100 friggin' pink frogs.
Yeah, but that's his signature. If you look at the Destiny's Wing as well, there's a little frog manning the cannon in front of the set as well. So he's been doing it from the beginning. So
he sneaks in small robots as well. He was the brain behind that little Seymour TV character from Hidden Side. The walking TV with the 2 antennas. That was also
yes.
Somewhere, but yeah. Oh my god.
Little legend. All right.
Go ahead.
Would you like to ask a question?
Okay. Like when we're talking, yeah. While we're talking about set designs, we got some of the concepts, and we saw some behind the scenes stuff on the day of the anniversary, and we wondered like how many prototype iterations do you go through before the set is pretty much finished?
way too many, to be honest. it's
dozens or hundreds.
no, but I think it really depends on what kind of set. Like some sets, you nail it pretty quickly. Like what is the overall thing you want to achieve here, and then it's pretty smooth sailing from there. Then it's smaller iterations, but some sets actually go through like bigger changes. And so it's really hard to kind of like give a number to it, but it's something that at least also depending on what kind of process the designer have, right? Some people like to build one model and then iterate on the same model and like rebuild smaller things, and then you end up with something different. But the way I would like to work with it is that I build something, and then instead of doing something different, I put that aside, and then I build something like maybe that looks similar, but it's a little bit different, and then put that aside, and then I build something new, right? And then that way you end up with a huge variety of different things. And then, as we were talking about in the story perspective as well, you pick and choose kind of like, oh, this detail is cool, or this way of putting it together is nice. So, and then you end up with the final design in the end in that way, right?
One of the more heartbreaking things you can see out in the Lego offices is when a designer has designed this beautiful thing which is $80, and then someone says, yeah, to fit this into the portfolio it probably needs to be $60, so can you just
like, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and then I think a lot of the things we got to share is stuff that we have been like, it's been boxed up for many years. And I think when we kind of planning out like what is we wanted to kind of like put out here in terms of anniversary as well, like my kind of take on it was like, let's try and share as much as we can here, both from concept art but also from model development and so on, and what we shared now, at least from also sketch models and stuff like that, there's only like a fraction of what we actually had, to be honest. Like we had so much stuff, and every year you might save 2 or 3 models, but then you throw away like 50 or something like that. That is like just going to the trash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there only were a place where we could exhibit that kind of thing, right, Michael?
Yeah, exactly. That would be nice.
Yeah, the classic, well-known global phenomenon Ninjago house.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Oh, man. Ninjago house. Wouldn't that be the day?
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Eljay. We hope you've been enjoying this episode thus far, but don't go anywhere because there's still plenty more to enjoy. Just wanted to remind everyone that if you're interested in joining in the conversation, look no further than on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. You need to be 13 years or older and read our rules, and you'll have a good time. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy the rest of the interview.
Well, we're going to pretend that nothing happened the past 24 hours and hop right back in.
All right, Eljay, go ahead and ask the next question.
All right, let me bring up the next question. I'm prepared. Here we go. So, obviously enough, Ninjago, huge theme, one of the largest that fans are aware of in the company's history. At what point exactly did Ninjago's success outstrip its initial expectation?
Well, that was actually like 4 months into the release in 2011. Everyone was a little shocked with how much this took off. And then actually it really went up, and then it really went down again, which was like, oh. But at that point, we'd already figured out that this will continue into 2012. So whenever we got into 2012, it just shot up again like crazy, maybe due to the TV show. But that's where you could really see empty shelves, and people were clamoring to get those spinners. I mean, you know, I think everyone was taken by surprise by that spike, and you know that's also what makes people realize, oh, maybe we actually have something here, because as everyone knows, this was supposed to be a 2-year thing or something like that, which is maybe it's not a bad idea. That was just Lego's thinking at the time. The toy trade always wants something completely new, but I guess what we figured out or happened upon was that you can actually renew a lot within a theme.
Real quick, I wonder, I apologize, got to follow up to that. I've heard a rumor for years that when Ninjago was announced to be ending, not canceled necessarily, but wasn't going to come back, the company was inundated with fan phone calls and fan emails. I've heard a number like 50,000 calls a day. Is there any legitimacy to that? I've heard it for ages.
I know that there was a lot of communication going back and forth, and there were like letters and calls from parents and children, parents on behalf of the children. I don't know how much it was, but it was definitely enough to get someone to sit up and take notice. But also, like, we got some great response on our TV show and from networks. So that was obviously also part of it. It's like, why would anyone end this on this high?
That makes total sense. And I mean, bouncing off the show, because you mentioned how that was really like a big turning point, where it kind of rocketed back up again. Obviously at its core, most Lego themes which have shows, the shows exist as like basically a commercial to help sell the sets. That is their purpose. That is their core idea, is advertising. What about Ninjago, and what about Ninjago's production made that kind of go a step further and really start to focus on its extended story and characters? What, in your eyes, elevated it above just being a simple commercial, at least to you as a creator?
Well, I think it was it was a stroke of luck. I mean, we just got the right people on this. Very dedicated people who everyone just wanted to elevate it, and to some extent also inexperience, actually, because I hadn't done anything like this before. Wilfilm hadn't done anything like this before. Hagemans have done a lot of writing, but I don't think they've ever had anything produced, and they certainly hadn't done a television show for children. So it was just everyone is like, okay, what do we think we want to do here, rather than, okay, there's this formula that we need to follow, and these are how you hit the beats. So it was just like ambition upon ambition and ambition. And then, something that was very important to me was also like, let's take the high ground here, because you get a lot of these shows where basically the last third of every episode is explaining the rules of a card game. Like you have numbers on screen, and like you almost have the characters explaining the rules of some product you need to go and buy. And that's where we just started like, no, with these Ninjago that spin to fight, let's not have them on spinners in the show. We'll do something that is visually cool, which was like the tornadoes of elements, So it was really about, okay, how this should be able to exist without there being a toy line attached to it.
Very good idea.
And I think actually it's also it's something that even to the day, like my role in the product development as well is often to kind of I try to think about like what is the product that we're creating here, and how what is the story, even though that the story might not be flushed out at that point in time and it might change a lot. It's still something that is very much on my mind in when we're developing the toys as well, that it needs to be following a good story. And then sometimes it's like, like Kai's speedboat in Sons of Garmadon, that might have had like a bigger role in my mind, and then it ended up as like 20 seconds in the last episode being like a submarine. But then again, was it cool? Yeah, it was really cool, and it worked really well for that product. So that's also fine,
I will never hear the end of that speedboat.
Really?
Gosh,
it was a very good scene.
The best of what you're given,
But it's like if that was the best integration that we could get for it, that fitted the story that we were telling, then like I couldn't see it any other place where we kind of ended where it would have fitted, right? So in that case, it's like it that was where it needed to be, right? So
I think it was probably also added to the assortment rather late, so it wasn't like something that was top in mind when creating the story. And from my point of view, is like the Master of Fire is getting a boat. But then, like, even more by making it a submersible boat.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have a chance to make up for it. All right, next wave. We've all seen official pictures released. Guys, get another watercraft. Really holding out for that, guys. Come on.
An actual wave is a wave.
Oh.
That was a joke.
Actual set wave.
My immersion's broken.
You're up.
Yes.
Next.
So this is a question for both of you. You both can answer this one. What aspect of Ninjago's production, either both for story or for sets, has resonated with you the most over like the 10 years?
Michael, you go first. I have no idea how to answer.
I'm trying to think about like so one of the things that I know for sure have resonated the most for me is not necessarily anything that have to do with product or have to do anything with the TV show at all. Actually, it's more how much of engagement it have driven with everything around it, from like sitting with you guys here, right, and seeing how like everybody is really is super kind of engaged in this world that we created. That for me is what's absolutely most special. It's like it's really nice to have something that you've been working on for this many years be loved by a lot of people. So that for me is super important.
Yeah, and without revealing too many details, it's to me, I think it's the connection you get to those characters that you're creating, but also because everyone is applying something to it. Then there's the designs are applied to it. There's the voices. There's like the subtlety in animation, and so right when COVID kind of hit, I was on a plane home from Budapest. I had just received, okay, here's the final script for 2021 from Braggy, and I was just sitting in the plane reading this thing and sobbing loudly. Saying that's because it's sad or if it was touching or anything like that, but it was just like the fact that you could get that kind of a reaction out of something on a written page really means that the stuff that has come before it really has been absorbed by you, and I think a lot of people feel like that. So it keeps culminating in my mind.
That's awesome. You're getting us all nervous.
I'm excited. You're very excited.
Just worried about Jay, guys. That's all.
Oh, no!
Just worried about Jay.
Nobody's safe,
Yeah, I mean, nobody is safe.
Are you guys saying Dareth isn't safe? No.
I can't wait for the Dareth.
You should always be worried about Dareth, but he make it into the season or not.
Yeah, no. Saw that coming. Dang. Cold.
That was good.
All right, flip it. I think Sokoda, you should go next.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead with mine. So, because talking about those characters, we wanted to know which are your favorite characters to work with. Like for Tommy, maybe to write stories about, or tell stories about, or for you, Michael, to build sets for.
Michael?
You can go. I go first. I think for me, what's always important is like when we're talking about designing sets. Throughout the years, we have tried a lot of different like color schemes and way of kind of refining what is a build for Kai and what is a build for Zane, right? And what kind of elements are we using? So I think Kai's color scheme with the red colors and how we're treating that is always. It's actually some of the most easy character to build for, because the red color is so unique, is so strong, and it's something that is just really easy to come up with something extremely strong. And we always try to kind of like get these more organic feels into whatever he's doing, because that's fitting really well with the fire element of him, right? But I think also Zane is an interesting one, because it's white in general is not always an easy one to pull off when it comes to a model, because it often comes across as kind of like a prototype or something that is less finished in a way. So that's always a tough one, but a good challenge as I see it.
I think at this point, I have most fun with the incidental characters. We know our ninjas so well at this point, and the stories are always kind of centered around their development. So I think where we really get the story freedom is, create these incidental characters that affect the story in some way. And we have some amazing ones coming up, both being important, but also just being, this one little one-off character. I mean, there's a reason why people love Vinny from NGTV News.
Yep.
But there's nothing special about his design at all. It's just like, okay, the way he conducts himself and talks, and the way he kind of graces the story every once in a while, and then he's out again. It makes a very endearing character. Yeah.
I will always be a fan of the Elemental Masters. Forever. They're the best characters in the show.
I mean, and that's one of the things that we could make endless spin-offs of this one. I don't know if they would make for great toys, but they would make for great entertainment. Like, as I think you guys have mentioned, like the Dareth Ronin Clutch Powers spin-off.
Yes.
Yeah.
So much power.
The wacky adventures of the ugly. It's
the adventures of the postman. There's a lot of potential there. A lot of great characters in Ninjago.
I have a brief cut-in question for Michael Knap.
Yep.
So you talk about color schemes and sets and characters. So once and for all, I must ask, what is Nia's color scheme?
So it depends.
Yeah.
Not an answer.
So she has the same problem that I have every morning, where I wake up and I'm like, what's my color scheme for the day?
So I think some of the things is that when she was Samurai X, it was pretty easy, right? She had her own color scheme going. When she then became the Water Ninja, we had a discussion of like, how do you keep some of the colors coming from Samurai X and mix that in with it? And I think that's where we came up with kind of the maroon and the bright blue, to kind of, even though that it's two colors that normally necessarily go great together, but we try to pull it off in that way. And then after the movie, we had the option to kind of making a bit more unique, and then going for more of the titanium with the blue, where it's a bit stronger, or it's like the dark gunmetal as we see it. But then I think one of the reasons why it does confuse a bit is that then at the same time we also have the legacy line running, right, where we're going back to that color scheme. So I think moving forward, like we are much more leaning into the gunmetal and the blue color scheme as kind of her main colors to go.
I respect it.
Just a bit of an anecdote here. So I wasn't very involved with the production of Day of the Departed, but when I then got like the final product and sat down to watch it, when this was the first time we saw Nia do Spinjitzu, and it was red, and I was horrified. Like, this is the Master of Water. Why is it?
That's really funny, and I never noticed that.
But I kind of got on the phone with Peter House, and I was like, I don't care. It's Friday. and it's 7 o'clock. You're going on work this weekend because we gotta change this. They were really good sports about it, but this was the one time where I probably just pulled that card of like.
Change it.
I don't care what you have to do.
You will never work in this town again. But it had been approved by other people, but it was just like the disconnection between Master of Water and being colored by the outfit. It
was too much.
Was it still red? I don't remember. I haven't seen.
No, it was changed to a grayish blue.
Okay.
But I think it was done in paint over. I don't think they didn't have time to do new renders.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's funny.
I don't think anyone noticed.
Yeah.
So.
It's out.
Right. There's probably a version out there with red vignettes to put.
All right, Eljay.
Yes, I am Eljay. All right. There we go. So. Obviously enough, Ninjago is a story theme. We're huge fans of story themes. We have an idea of how story themes are managed from a fan perspective. But we're curious, from your guys' perspective, what are some of the greater challenges of balancing story and sets? And off of that, which set was the hardest to fit into the story? And what's a really good tale? This is a very long question. What's a great tale of a set that came from a story idea?
So I can start with what it means to in a Lego context to be a theme like Ninjago, where story and the product is developed in-house and it's something that we are in charge of. That means that we have a lot of opportunities to do things that the IP themes don't have, right? Like we are not sitting and waiting for someone to tell, hey, this is what's going into the movie, now execute it for us, right? What is the best toy? And here's like, we actually have the option to develop both the story, but also the product to an extent where we are in the driver's seat and can kind of like steer it in the way that we want it to be. So that is definitely one of the strongest positions to have, right? Because that's where you can create the toys that makes a difference instead of just following someone else's lead there. Yeah.
And we have this process of Michael and the guys are involved in the story development. To some extent, the writers are involved in the toy development. So it's just information keep going back and forth. But in terms of concrete examples, I guess like the Destiny's Bounty really came from, we knew we wanted the ninja to have a home or like a base, but it's also like, if you have a base that is a location, you need to keep going there. So how do you make a base that is on the move? And then that just turned into this weird thing about, it's a ship, but it's just a ship that can fly. At a certain point, it was actually a windmill. They put in a windmill, and like the windmill blades kind of did like this, and then that was only on a concept level. But the idea that there was a base which they could bring from place to place, that was the Destiny's Bounty. And then other things like the Hegemans had written in this ridiculous thing from Ed and Ed in the Scrapyard with the wrecking ball. So that turned into a set. So it is possible that influences go both ways.
Yeah, the Destiny's Mill.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I can come up with any really current examples, but that's just my.
No, I think in most cases it's more on a character level, right, Tommy? That where it's heavily influenced, right? Where a strong character is written into the story that we haven't planned with, and then integrating that. That is probably how the most of the time is playing out as I see it.
Actually, the Colossus and from Hunter and Sons of Garmadon, we didn't. That's something the Hegemon specifically wanted to do because they had just watched Attack on Titan and they thought like, wow, this is great. Fight a huge thing in a city. At some point, it was actually 3 Colossuses. But it was the longest time before we actually knew that would make it into a toy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we actually like when I worked specifically on that together with them as well, and we sent a lot of back and forth, and they had a little bit of like art directing to do there as well on the products. What we actually pitched in the beginning was something that looked way more Oni, so it was like just a giant, like almost like troll Oni, but they wanted something that was like more in that stone colossus kind of direction. So that's what we went for in the end, basically.
Yeah.
Well, as Attack on Titan fans,
part of the idea, I think, was that subconsciously Gamadon created it in the image of his father. Like, has the big rice hat and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
That makes a lot of
that
sense.
makes a lot of sense.
Now,
That's cool.
More importantly, have you guys watched Attack on Titan?
Oh my goodness.
I have not.
I just had a vision of the ninja and like the scout regiment just like soaring
Oh my
through
God.
the streets,
It's a good show.
taking
I can
down
see why it was
taking down the
influenced.
Oni Titan. That's cool.
I just kind of nodded and pretended that I knew everything about it. I was like, yeah, that's great.
Like 50-60% of all the discussions you have with the story writers, right? They throw around with like so many references of like old movies from the 50s you had never seen, or something that is like, yeah, it's like, okay, it must be a good thing that you have seen. I have no idea what you're talking about. And you go back and you have a long list of all the TV shows and movies that is like, okay, so that was what they were talking about.
Brilliant.
Like just a smile and nod, smile and nod.
If Neek ever gets a hold of being a part of the script writing process, drills everywhere, drills, nothing but drills, 100%.
Well, keeping on track with sets, I was curious to know. So with Ninjago sets, obviously there's a lot of different facets between dragons and vehicles and buildings with architecture. I was curious what it was like to design the sets to have an identity that's unique to Ninjago. Like, what's a unique aspect of them that truly makes them Ninjago sets? Or, to put it into another way, what makes a bike a Ninjago bike? Or a dragon a Ninjago dragon? How do you link it all together?
So first of all, in most cases, dragons in Lego context is something that is really owned by us, right? Like you don't see a lot of dragons appear in other playsets or in other story themes in general, because it's something we want to keep quite unique to us as much as possible, for sure. So that's an easy one as I see it. But what we often are talking about when we talk style in Ninjago is something that is, what is the cross between a fantasy theme with a sci-fi twist to it, right? So that is often what is defining what Ninjago is when it comes to it. You need something where it's just not a classic fantasy theme. It's not just a thing that is a pure sci-fi, right? It can be, you can kind of have the dials, but it's kind of this the same way as you look at the steampunk and diesel punk, right? It's a mix of two art styles that is kind of like put together as I see it. And then on top of that, like we often talk about the Asian kind of style that we put into it, and that's something that at least from a color perspective is quite strong. As soon as you have the red, the black and the white mixed with the touch of gold, you kind of like have an instant kind of look at like, oh, okay, this feels familiar, right? So but that's also something that is established for us to use, right? But that is often how we see it, and to that extent as well, it's not like aiming for one specific Asian culture, saying like, oh, it's only Japanese or it's only Chinese, right? We draw inspiration from a lot of different cultures there, and kind of try to transform it into being what Ninjago is. So we very rarely take something that is like, this is clearly exactly this. It's always transformed in some way into a new image in a way.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess in terms of vehicles, it's always like, oh, a vehicle is a weapon. Sometimes it's a concealed weapon. So the thing about blades, that's probably a low-hanging handle to be able to pull to make it like distinctly Ninjago.
Mm.
But
yeah, and
So
I agree, and Tommy, there's also the whole thing about at least when it comes to designing the product itself, the higher the price point, the bigger opportunity is that to go a bit more abstract with it. And the lower in the price point, you need to be more iconic towards. So if you make a small bike in a small price point, it needs to be quite recognizable, because otherwise the 7-year-old kid standing at the shelf is like just seeing, if it's very abstract, like they cannot decode it, right? What is this that I'm looking at? It looks cool, but I'm not really sure what it is. So I might not ask my parents for it, right? But if it's clearly a bike with some sort of Ninjago aesthetic to it, it's much more, hey, I want that bike that I see there, right? So,
and reminds me, we should actually make some more motorcycles.
yeah, for sure. I think we haven't had enough. Right?
But honestly, I don't get the, I wouldn't call it hate, but the hate on motorcycles in Ninjago. I think they're always awesome.
But there's no hate. It's just.
You're
You
right.
have enough motorcycles for a motorcycle gang at this point.
There isn't any hate, only massive amounts of loathing. No, I'm kidding. I think we have like a whole philosophy on motorcycles and in Ninjago, more specifically Lloyd and motorcycles.
Yes, it's mainly Lloyd.
Right off of that, I'm just gonna put this out there. Another one of these Ninja Chargers, Ninja Nightcrawlers. Sorry, whoopsie. Ninja Nightcrawlers. Al dente, cooked to perfection. Anyway.
More green cars. More green cars.
I can
All
never.
right.
I have the same practice as Tommy when it comes to purchasing Ninjago sets, where like if I'm gonna purchase a Ninjago set, it's gonna like, if it's like a vehicle or something, it's like this vehicle has to have like a massive amount of like importance to the series. I own the Ninja Nightcrawler because of the one moment Lloyd punched the screen out of just anger, and so I got it and I like drew on the sticker little crack marks.
Oh my god!
That moment was so beautiful, and I went
That's
right
awesome.
to Target. And I'm like,
That's
I want
cool.
this car because of this moment. So
It's very good.
That's awesome. Yeah. But I think that's of course that the different sets appeal to people in a different way, and I guess also the older you get with it, right, then that some of the sets we put out is not necessarily targeted towards them, right? But when, for instance, like the my dog playing with the in the background, but for instance, if you look at some of the legacy sets coming out now with the big ice mech, right, that one is one that is like, it's a good toy also for the younger kids, but there is so much detail and so much passion put into that one that it also appeals upwards into like the more when we see people or kids normally dropping out of Ninjago, right? There's something to dig into there, as I see it as well.
All right. Okay. Elle, do you want to tackle a big one?
Oh gosh.
Or at least an interesting one?
Do I have another one? My goodness.
You do?
I do?
Unless you want Sokoda to ask.
Yeah, no, I marked it for Sokoda.
Wait, the last one?
Wait, I don't know which one we're talking about. Meso, what number?
Let's not throw the
list.
Having given it like a
the dangerous question. Oh, this one's marked for you, Tyler.
Oh
yeah, you're right. Well, I just asked one, so Elle, you're up. Take number 7.
Okay, all right, shoot. All right, so Ninjago, huge legacy, no pun intended, but slightly. Of that legacy is a theatrical film, which is unbelievably unique to Ninjago, given it's an original IP for Lego, and it's got its own theme, its own movie.
Michael left.
Yeah, we'll go ahead.
No,
We were talking about the movie, and he's
I'm
like,
like,
"Around."
I don't want to hear anything more.
He's leaving. Like,
Movie?
Tommy, you
Click.
take the movie. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'll go ahead and restart. So, Ninjago, huge legacy. One of the things most unique to it is a theatrical film for an original Lego IP that is something no other theme can claim. So, in that sense, how did the production of the Lego Ninjago movie differ from standard Ninjago waves, and then how did that process change after the movie's release and reception, and what has been the lasting legacy to you guys of that film?
So I think I worked on the movie as well, and at the same time also worked on together with Tommy, and we were still doing some of the TV show at the same time, right? So I joined the movie production and what we were doing with the set a little bit later than the rest of the team, but with there's no doubt that it took some time for me to figure out what was it we were creating here, right? Is it because it's not the TV show. It's not something that is following along in the same line. So that for me, at least personal, I need to figure that out before I could really engage into what we were creating here, right? And I think that's also sometimes what is talked to from fans' perspective is whether you like it or not. Is that it's not necessarily the Ninjago movie that you wanted to see, but it is something different, right? It's its own story and its own entity as I see it, right? So I think also if you ask Tommy, he have had another idea of how a cinematic movie would have played out if he was in charge, right? But that is not changing the fact that what the movie did for Ninjago have done is that it have put much more eyes on the theme of Ninjago than we have ever seen before. So I think that's kind of the legacy of it, is that it really draw a lot of people into Ninjago and made them fall in love with it, because when they then saw the TV show, it was just that really like put a lot of people in here as well. So
yeah, and I think that movie really had like almost the best of waves of sets, which
Agreed.
Helped push Ninjago forward in terms of, okay, there's also some new learnings and an evolution of a design style, and you can see all those city gardens, Lego City Gardens is absolutely a product of the aesthetic that was established in that movie with the city. This one we tried to kind of replicate into the show in Sons of Garmadon. And obviously the Destiny's Bounty from the movie is like the best one ever.
For sure, and I think also from a design perspective, like there was this like extremely proud feeling in the team in general for the Lego designers that, hey, like someone like Lego really believes in this theme, right? Let's kill it with these models that we're creating here. Like these needs to be the absolute top of the best, and we have an opportunity to maybe do something a bit different that we normally do, like get out of our comfort zone and really go all in on it. And I think that's also shown, as Tommy said, like in the sets and what actually came out of it, because we definitely went all out as much as we possibly could from product side as well.
They 100% delivered on the set side, I'll tell you that. Reception of the movie, people have different opinions, but the sets are almost unanimously like the best ever. So they definitely fulfilled that vision.
I would say my approach to the Ninjago movie wouldn't have worked, because I was so into like the mindset of, oh, everyone knows the TV series, everyone should get a continuation of the TV series, and obviously what the new movie absolutely got right was, okay, this is for an audience that needs to be introduced to this.
And Tommy, as I see it as well, it's the first Lego movie was a parody movie of Lego themes, right? Like being very, very self-conscious of poking fun of Lego itself. Same with the Batman movie, right? That was a parody movie on Batman, right? And I see it as the same with the Ninjago movie. It's a very beautiful thing, but it's also a parody over what Ninjago is to some extent, right? So I think it's in that, like seeing it in that sequence, I think that actually fits really well and have a home, right? But
I remember the scene of Garmadon talking about his forearms. Like that's a wonderful scene that really sells the point you're making.
But yeah, and I think you can actually see some of that being worked into the TV series, but also because of just the longevity of the TV series. We've done the same thing so many times over and over again that we need to be a little self-conscious and meta about it. So sometimes whenever we do something, oh, blades again, we know the viewer is going to think that, so why don't we have a character say it? Like they become the surrogate of the viewer by having, this character has the same experience as the viewer, having experienced this so many times. So why don't we make a joke out of that?
Yeah.
I was gonna say as a joke, because like Tyler, wow, you're making really good progress on gardens.
I know, in like the span of 5 minutes.
In the span of an hour.
He's one of our fastest builders. This is
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I can see you sitting building there like while we're talking. So.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
full immersion. Like this is a Ninjago time. I'm so glad to have this set. Like it's just a wonderful culmination of everything you guys have been doing for years with these. It's my first modular building, so it's
Awesome.
it's wonderful.
Appreciate it.
And the movie is definitely owed a lot to the to that. So
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, speaking about like Ninjago going on for that long, like having the 10-year anniversary this year, we wanted to know like what are your hopes and expectations for the future of Ninjago? What are things you'd want to see, or what do you think, in what direction could it go?
I think one of the interesting things about working on Ninjago is it needs to reinvent itself, and it probably needs to do so every 3 years or so. Because it's about, okay, you introduce a new audience to the show, then you grow up that audience as you grow up the story, and then, okay, that's the end of a story then. Now, what do we do now? So, what I hope is that Ninjago can keep reinventing itself in interesting ways, where we carry along a lot of baggage with us. But it's also sometimes it's a matter of like how do you shed yourself of that baggage, because that's obviously going to be an entry barrier for new kids. What I would hope most is that we were talking about spin-offs earlier. I mean, I think there's different versions of Ninjago out there, like there are for Transformers, for instance, where you have like Transformers Rescue Bots, which is very light. It's a good way to get into the theme, but then you also have like the heavy lore stuff. So, given infinite amounts of money and budget, I would love it if we could just like do spin-offs and here's the main story, here are the spin-offs and side stories, and here's the lighter entertainment for the more humble viewer that are just entering this theme.
that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But we don't have infinite time. I just want to say.
No, sadly. Yeah, because if you look at, for instance, a theme like Ninja Turtles, right? I sometimes I envy them as well, that they can actually like reinvent themselves so drastically as they have done, right? And that's something that is not really an option to some extent in Ninjago, right? Or at least it will be extremely hard if all of a sudden all of the characters look completely different towards how they were looking before, because like throughout 10 years and then changing something that drastically is a tough decision, right? So
I mean, the fans have a tendency to react very strongly to even minor changes.
For sure, like you change a haircut and everything blows up, right? So
I don't think Ninjago fans are adversaries of new, but they're definitely concerned about different.
Yeah, and I think I can completely agree with Tommy with like I think that right now we have a lot of things. The story up till now, like the last 10 years, have been kind of like following the same timeline, same kind of storyline all the way through, and there is so much potential to branch off and do a lot of different things. So that would also be my wish for seeing something like that, right? Something that is kind of going different directions, but still like keeping it in the universe of Ninjago, right?
And it's you always want to have a good conclusion. I mean, to me, March of the Oni was actually almost as good of a conclusion as you could have gotten. In terms of, okay, you leave people off on a place where, okay, it's in good spirits, everything's come around, you have a bit of closure between Lloyd and Garmadon, but you also have that open end. I mean, an original idea for the ending of that one was that Garmadon would actually leave on Firstborn with the 4 weapons of Fujitsu to go and create his own realm. So that was a wonderful ending, which could have blown the whole thing out of the water. Like, but it's not ending. It's not a story you need to tell. It's just like an implied one.
Wow.
Huh.
That could have happened.
Yeah.
I mean,
A sense of fan fiction coming. That's fascinating.
that is very, very fascinating. Wow.
Interesting.
I mean, I generally agree. Like, I've expressed some dissent towards March of the Oni in the past, but I actually 100% agree with that. It managed to bring everything like thematically back full circle, and I think it'd be difficult, not impossible, but difficult to do that again. But I'm sure you guys can find a way. You guys are wizards at what you do.
I just saw see that podcast where you talked about that, or where it's like, oh, this is clever. They're bringing us back full circle. Like, they're back at the monastery.
Yeah, I always did love that angle.
Been reintroduced, so it is almost as good as a reset without being a reset as you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's one of those you don't realize it's reset until you watch the first episode of season 11. You're like, this is familiar. Why is this familiar? Wait, season 1, episode 1.
I mean, it's parallelism, right? In its purest form.
Yeah.
You start off with Kai in the blacksmith shop forging regular weapons, and then you end with Kai in the blacksmith's area forging golden weapons. Yeah. It's an evolution, and it marks, where he's come from up until this point. So I love that stuff, because it's the same thing, but drastically different under very different circumstances.
It's very interesting to see, especially in comparison to some things that some of us are more eager to critique. Like, I remember most recently Master of the Mountain. You have the season start off, ninja captured. Season stuff happens, last 2 episodes, ninja captured again. Well, it's easy to say, well, that's just retaining the status quo, but that's just a positioning. It's just positioning everyone. Things have still happened. The status quo has shifted dramatically, but it's positioning characters in a place where the rest of the story can play out. And with March of the Oni and whatnot, it is a repositioning, and it is, I think, Meso, parallelism. That sums it up really nicely.
I love stuff like that.
I really like the part where Cole fell, and that was and just pancaked.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk about how that scene originally was as well. We should have a podcast about that at some point. There's so many good ideas that fall by the wayside, because that scene would have explained how he survived the fall in March of the Oni.
Okay.
So,
I'm not sure if you can see it, but I do have Cole hanging on to the anchor of the Destiny's Bounty. he's in a continuous state of falling above my bed. So
I'm so proud.
I mean, it's such a huge part of the show. I'm just constantly falling. So I have him constantly falling above me. That's awesome.
That's a good example of how we guys are watching you guys. I mean, the Ninjago community as a whole, because it was definitely Fraggy and Rob May's idea was like, okay, so these guys were talking about a lot about Cole falling, and there was some critique of that. Let's just make an entire episode about that and then call it the real fall.
That's awesome.
It's out there, and I'm pointing.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah, like we're overselling the fall of a ninja on those posters.
The community.
Let's just have like
that.
Yeah. I remember as well. Tommy was like, "Yeah, let's just have a full episode where they're falling for 10 minutes," and then like everybody was just looking, "What?"
That'll never work.
Call it the real fall.
Exactly.
All right, that's it. I want this to be a thing now. You know how certain communities, they'll call each other things, or you have like certain communities where there's like a thing that they do to greet other people. Like some places it's like this, or it's like a certain handshake. I just want Ninjago fans to carry around a Cole minifigure when they see another Ninjago fan. Hey! How's it going?
Cole drop.
Cole drop, yeah. Oh, man. All right. Well, is there any other questions, comments for anyone?
cheers to 20 years of Ninjago. I'll see you guys in 10 years.
See you in 10 more years.
I
We'll
mean,
be back right here.
I've already asked
sure.
my question on another podcast, which everyone watching should definitely check out.
Advertise.
But I'm just waiting, and I will wait patiently. I'm a patient man. I will wait for the next trilogy, the next saga in the Ninjago universe. That's right, The Legend of the Beige Ninja. We've discussed it. I'm ready, okay?
Jared's children.
My heart and mind are ready.
Michael Knap is like, how am I gonna design a beige set?
I'm trying to think about like, so what colors need to match, like mix to get into beige, right? So
the master of bland.
Final question: when will Dareth get his dragon?
he can. We can work on a small polybag maybe where he can have a small brown dragon coming in.
Oh my gosh!
Yes. My life will be complete.
All right.
Well, Tommy, Michael, thank you both so much for being a part of this. Again, thank you to the Lego Ambassador Network for setting us up with this. I sense that I said something funny, Eljay.
Lego Ambassador Network.
What did I say?
Lego Master Network.
Very different thing.
Thank you. I think I in my brain I said ambassador.
I think
Apparently
Hayley
I did
has
not.
qualified to the level of master at this point. So.
Dang.
Well, I am Sensei Wolf. I guess I should call myself Master Wolf, but I'm one of those two. But well, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully we'll get these two lovely gentlemen back on our show at a later date. Hopefully in 5, 10, 20, 50 years from now.
Or sooner. Who knows?
Or sooner, yes. Hopefully sooner. But thank you again for watching. I have been Sensei Wolf.
I'm Eljay.
I'm Meso, and since it was dog, says goodbye.
I'm Sokoda.
And I'm out of here.
He's done. His contract's over.
Adios.
See you guys.
Have a very ninja day.